everyone, my name is Rebecca and welcome back to... Okay, I gotta take this thing off, it doesn't feel right. This is the first of 5 videos I'll be doing on topics at least tangentially related to The Abominable Bride. I have a good reason for focusing on this one so much. Not only is it my favorite episode by far, but it's also hugely important to TJLC. If you stuck around for the post-credits bit last time, you heard me mention that this was the episode that pushed me from being 99% sure to 100% sure enough to be talking about it in public knowing it's real. That's for a lot of reasons, but one of the biggest was that The Abominable Bride was proof that TJLC gave us the power to predict the show accurately, because we had already guessed all of the most important parts of that episode, and we predicted them while the writers were blatantly lying and saying our predictions were wrong. This episode isn't intended to make anyone who didn't see it coming feel bad, but rather to build up your confidence in the community as a whole's ability to get things right. So if I were to say the phrase Gay Victorian Fever Dream, some of you newer fans might just think I'm describing The Abominable Bride in a silly way, but before the episode aired, that theory was a subset of TJLC, a group of people who predicted that the Victorian special wasn't going to be an unrelated one-off, the way everyone else assumed it would be, but rather was going to explore Sherlock's subconscious desires using repressed Victorian society as a backdrop. It was just TJLCers too. No one else seemed to question the fact that the episode was going to be unrelated like the writers were saying at the time. But more on that in just a second. For now, let's go back all the way to the beginning. It's November of 2014 and TJLC is still relatively new. We already knew that we were going to be getting a 90-minute one-off special because Series 4 was still years away, but we knew nothing else about that episode. Then this picture comes out and everyone is wondering why it's Victorian and what the heck is going on. You'd think we would need a little while to get anywhere with just that picture and no other information, right? Not if you're Ashleigh Kinklock, who the very same day posted that the episode was going to be a fever dream set in 1895. Keep in mind, we didn't know the episode was going to be in 1895 at the time. We didn't know it was a dream. We didn't have any lines, any set lock, nothing. She did that. Based on my research, that is the first instance by far of this concept being mentioned. It took a little while for it to catch on, but eventually it did. Ashleigh's joking phrase about a fever dream was eventually expanded to the Gay Victorian Fever Dream tagline we all know and love today. It was a little while before we got any new information about the special after that, but when we did, the writers and actors started making sure everyone knew not to expect anything related to the larger plot in this episode. It was going to be a completely unrelated one-off, just an excuse to get Martin and Ben in some different costumes. No important relevance to the stories whatsoever.
Quickly, can we talk about Sherlock and what we can expect from the Christmas special?
You can expect Victorian Sherlock Holmes. Victorian Sherlock Holmes. We checked the books, it turns out he wasn't a modern detective at all. He was a Victorian detective. We should have read them more carefully. So we fixed that, and he's now a Victorian detective like he ought to be.
The idea of the Gay Victorian Fever Dream was already taking off, though. The deciding detail for a lot of people, myself included, was that we actually saw a modern-day dress in one of the setlock shoots. Welovethebeekeeper put out a meta analyzing some of these stills, and drew the conclusion that the episode would actually explore the ramifications of Moriarty's return. Still, even after that, not everyone was on board. One of the most popular explanations was that this was going to be part of a smaller minisode similar to Many Happy Returns. The idea that the episode would actually be related to some larger overarching plot was still largely dismissed. And that was mostly because the writers kept saying it wasn't going to happen. And at this point, some of the other fans started going on and on about how wrong we all were, how delusional we were for thinking it was going to be relevant to the story when the writers have told us time and again that it wasn't going to be. That they were going to be laughing when it turned out it was just a one-off and we were all wrong the entire time. The wheel turns, nothing is ever new. Users like Sherlockwatson, Shinka, Kinklock, and the John Hell continue to be extremely vocal about the theory anyway. Colleen the John Hell went so far as to helpfully offer to eat a cactus if it turned out she was wrong. Then we started getting more information. During Comic-Con 2015, we got a new trailer, which users like Kim Beanies for Spock pointed out was all the more meaningful if you thought it was happening in Sherlock's head. And it was this weekend that Mark announced that the special would in fact address some of the issues relating to Moriarty's return, which was a huge red flag for a lot of people. Meta writers like Inevitably Johnlocked and Final Problem, and again other users like the John Hell, pointed out that the episode couldn't address address plot details and be unrelated. They had to be lying. Again, these metas tended to focus on how this worked in terms of TJLC. If we were right, the episode would not only be a chance to explore Sherlock's feelings, but it would do so in a way that would have ramifications for all other Holmes adaptations and the way the writers viewed them. The fact that the first scene that we saw was a direct lift from the private life of Sherlock Holmes made it only all the more incriminating if that was what the inside of Sherlock's imagination looked like. And the second trailer only helped things along. There were these weird transitions and parts where all the characters turned to look into the camera, things that could either indicate that the show was deteriorating into a lot of flashy nonsense, or clues to confirm that Sherlock was in fact imagining the whole thing. There started to be an even stronger divide. If you were taking BBC Sherlock seriously at this point, you either thought the creators were completely high on their own narcissism, or you believed they had a greater intent for all of these choices. TJLC was the deciding factor between these two camps. For most people into TJLC at this point, the Gay Victorian Fever Dream would be the ultimate statement of intent. If we were right about this, it would mean we were seeing the show correctly. The title went along with this too. For people who were expecting the episode to take place in Sherlock's mind, the title The Abominable Bride gave us a pretty clear indication of how Sherlock really saw Mary.
The special is called The Abominable Bride.
In the last few months before the episode aired, Loudest Subtext in Television came out just before releasing her 2.0 reading, and said the one thing she was most sure about The Abominable Bride was that it was Victorian because it was examining Sherlock's repressed desires. Again, the Gay Victorian Fever Dream concept went hand in hand with TJLC. If we were right about this, it would only because we correctly understood that John and Sherlock building to a romantic relationship was the driving force of the story. Then Amanda Abbington, who is probably the worst liar involved with BBC Sherlock next to Martin, who has mysteriously not made any Sherlock-related appearances, by the way, started dropping hints that the special wasn't what everyone was expecting. Everyone except us, who knew exactly what was coming next. At this point, most TJLCers were pretty sure about the Gay Victorian Fever Dream. All kinds of posts were being made about it, and it was just a really fun time. The best analog I have to that time is the way we're viewing TJLC now. We knew the truth, even as they were lying to us. The fact that everyone else didn't know yet didn't matter. We knew confirmation was coming. Watching the episode for the first time with the expectation that it was going to be a dream made it a very different experience from what I've heard people who didn't see that twist coming say. Instead of seeing references to the dream as weird dialogue mistakes, I know that I at least saw them as what they were. Hints that Sherlock was in fact imagining the whole thing, just like we thought. Yes! I know it is. Yes, I know, right? How could Moriarty survive? Deeper. This is shot so bizarrely. Like, it makes sense if it's all in his head, because of, they're just these, it's like a dream, almost, like the repeat that happened just there, and, the way it just paused when you were seeing the bride, and it was suddenly in the middle of the street. This is all Mind Palace. This is all Mind Palace. Virus in the data. This is Gay Victorian Fever Dream. I am calling it. There's no other explanation right now other than Gay Victorian Fever Dream. And then Moriarty showed up and started talking about falls and landings, and the plane landed, and we knew we were right. In the plane? He's in the plane. He's in the plane! He's in the plane! Please do not fillet that gun. I knew it! This is not a surprise. Stop trying to make this a surprise. Plane is landing. Plane is landing. Please. Elephant fell over. What? Yes! It was an amazing moment, getting something that important correct, and getting it right despite the fact that they were lying to us about it.
The Victorian special was amazing, Abominable Bride. And in terms of... I think I sort of expected it to be, well, this is a standalone, this is a separate sort of fun thing that we're going to do.
Well, you expected that because we explicitly told you that's what it was.
Yes.
It shows the power of lying.
And everything else in the episode up to that point and after just confirmed this reading even more. And the final scene cemented everything. Flash forward to the present, when the writers have said almost nothing about the details of Series 4, except that they definitely aren't going for canon Johnlock, and then go on about how much they lie about plot details in order to maintain surprises. While also mentioning that if they happen to include, I don't know,
a gay baddie, a grumpy bisexual person, a very camp gay person,
it wouldn't be just for the sake of it. It would be part of the larger story that they're telling.
We're not trying, we don't have any agenda like that. We just want to, we're doing the show we're doing. That doesn't mean we're going to suddenly out a character or anything just for the sake of it.
They also mentioned that LGBT representation is hugely important and is something that all of television has to get better at.
Has to be done with such, I think, intelligent delicacy too. I think it's important that kids watching television see themselves on screen. I think that's important. It's very, very important. But to add to that, it must be done in a way that it doesn't seem as though you're forgiving them. You know, so often you can say, this person is gay, but they're a perfectly normal person too. Well, to a kid, you're saying, I didn't know it was in question. I didn't know it was a doubt until this point. So you have to be careful with it. But yes, the representation is hugely important, and it's something all of television has to get better at.
But they're definitely not doing it. Still, whatever they have coming in Series 4, which definitely isn't Johnlock, they've said that multiple times, we should all just believe them. They never lie about anything. Whatever it is going to be huge. It's going to make history.
I keep saying to people, if we pull this off, it will be television history. I think it really will, because it's kind of groundbreaking. They've done something again, these guys, that's never been done before. And
because in terms of this story, in the end,
love conquers all.
The reading that let us predict the story before is letting us do it again now. Because if we weren't right about TJLC, we would have never predicted the Abominable Bride with so much accuracy. Just like we knew before that Sherlock was going to wake up in the middle of that episode, we already know what the history-making moment at the end of Series 4 will be. Thank you for watching this episode related to some TJLC history, and thank you to all of the blogs I referenced here, not only for letting me reference you, but also for putting yourselves out there with the Gay Victorian Fever Dream theory, giving us a proven track record on being right about this show. So thanks inevitably Johnlocked, Welovethebeekeeper, Final Problem, Sherlockwatson, Loudest Subtext in Television, Beanies for Spock, Shinka, Kinklock, the Johnlock Hell, and everyone else involved in the Gay Victorian Fever Dream movement. Colleen the Johnlock Hell has offered to eat an even bigger cactus if we're wrong about the kiss happening in Series 4, and you too can take the cactus pledge today. And you can commemorate the Gay Victorian Fever Dream movement by listening to this playlist put out by Ashleigh Kinklock, who you'll remember started this whole thing. Next time, we'll be getting into the first part of The Abominable Bride. I hope you're excited for the multi-layered subtextual extravaganza ahead. Until then, thank you for watching, and get ready to believe.